everyone, it's Nicole and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to start a new series. If you've been following me on BookTube for a bit, you know that I'm terrible at reading physical copies, but it was not always like that. The first few years of my booktubing career, I actually was really good about it. But it was in uni, and the moment I entered the job market, my reading preferences and reading habits changed drastically. And now years later, I barely pick up physical books, and when I do pick them up, they put me in a slump. And if you go to my Goodreads shelf, you will see about 10 books with a currently reading label, and most of these books are physical books. I don't have the same issue with ebooks or even audiobooks, even though it's not always a good idea for me to pick up an audiobook because of the processing issues. But for some reason, physical books are just my Achilles heel. I just cannot read them till the end. It's been so long since I started a physical book and read it till the end. So that is something that I need to address, because I've been trying to put it in my goals every single year, but because nothing holds me accountable like a video series, I've never even actually give it a good try. So I thought I'm going to start a video series dedicated to reading my actual shelf of books, because I'm also moving soon and I would like to weed out some books that I'm not interested in. Of course, many other booktubers did similar series in the past. For example, Kayla from BooksandLala, she is the most popular person who did a challenge similar to that. And also Nicole from Nicole and Her Books comes to mind. She's doing her TBR completion series, where she reads the books she promised she's going to read in her TBRs and she didn't. Me, I have a different issue, so the rules are going to be different. Every month I'm going to choose 4 books from my shelves that I'm going to give an actual chance. If I'm going to complete 2 books out of this TBR, I'm going to be allowed to read an ebook. And trust me, this is a really good motivator for me, because most new releases I buy as ebooks, or I read on Scribd, which also is ebooks and audiobooks. If I'm not going to complete all 4 books this month, these leftovers are going to transfer to the next month. And if it's just 1 book, for example, I would be allowed to only pick 3 new books from the shelves. This way, we will make sure that I'm not going to just leave all these books half read and move to other books. Also, DNFs are allowed. I'm not trying to have a bad time and get into a slump. I just want to actually read the books that I'm interested in. There are a lot of books on my shelves that I'm really interested in. So this is gonna be the challenge. I don't know for how long I'm going to do it. For at least 6 months, I think, because I do have a hefty pile of unread physical books. Maybe it's gonna be a year, maybe it's gonna be till the end of 2021. I already picked up my 4 books for the month of March, and the first one is gonna be a hefty one. I will probably have leftovers by the end of the month. So, The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters. I tried to pick it up during Pop Culture Readathon in January, and I've read about, let me see, 17 pages. It's not that the book was boring. The book was actually interesting and it's promising. I just cannot force myself to pick up physical books, because also the lighting in my house is not that good. And I have to read in the morning or in the middle of the day, and I'm more of a night reader. This one is about a Victorian haunted house, and this is the only Sarah Waters book that is not gay, which held me back from reading this book, I'm not going to lie. Also, I feel a sense of resentment that this one was shortlisted for the Man Booker in 2009. And other books by Sarah Waters, *𝕊𝕋𝕆 is objectively her best book, structure-wise and plot-wise, were not. And that screams homophobia to me. So I guess I have some irrational feelings about this book and I'll have to get over them. So the first book of the challenge is The Little Stranger. Then I thought I'm going to pick up a couple of fantasies, because I'm trying to get back into adult fantasy and it's going great. I've read Jade City, I've read Black Sun, loved both of them. One of the few that I picked for the challenge though is the Swordspoint by Ellen Kushner, and this one I think is a classic. It's an older adult fantasy with a gay protagonist. I've read the first chapter of it for a video, I think for the Try a Chapter book tag, and I actually really enjoyed the writing style. So I think this one is gonna be easy. So this is the second book. The third book is also a fantasy. It's the 5th season by N.K. Jemison, another big book, but I hope that the fantasy is going to sweep me over and I'm going to forget that it's a physical book. This one is supposed to be about a world that is expecting an impending climate catastrophe, so that seems both horrific and intriguing, because is this the end of days novel, or perhaps the characters can do something about it? We don't know yet. The last book that I picked is Omens by Kelly Armstrong. It's about a girl that is being targeted for the sins of her parents that are both serial killers. I love the premise of this. I think it's going to be very action-packed and suspenseful, and it's something that I truly need. So these are all the books that I'm going to be reading in March. I'm going to vlog about it. I'm going to tell you what I think about the books, but it's gonna be structured more like a wrap-up, not like a classical reading vlog. Let me tell you a little bit about my progress. A little bit, because there was not much progress made, and I had to anticipate it going into this project because I am very resistant to change as a person, and I definitely fell out of habit of picking up a physical object to read. I read on my phone usually, and because of that I kind of got used to scrolling social media and then hopping immediately into the app and reading a book. I'm fully aware of it, and I have to treat myself kindly because this is not going to be an easy change. I already crossed some goals. We're currently in the second part of March, closer to the end, and I only finished one book, which is concerning because I don't know if I'm gonna finish all of them and do what I set out to do, but once again I have to be patient with myself. I have to retrain myself to start picking up physical books. The book in question is Omens by Kelly Armstrong. I really enjoyed it. I was very invested in it, and I picked it up every single evening to read because I actually was interested in what's gonna happen. Either way, this one is almost 500 pages. It has a very fun plot, and it definitely exceeded my expectations. I've been looking for unusual urban fantasies for a bit now, especially longer urban fantasies that I could just dive into and forget about everything. For that to happen, I usually need a really cool protagonist that doesn't have any toxic romantic interest, because it's very popular in urban fantasy, and a very fascinating world building, and this has both. The story went into the direction that I couldn't have predicted, especially because I do not see this book on BookTube a lot. I actually never seen it on BookTube. I mooched it from BookMooch, and it was kind of a random pick. This is a story about a young woman named Olivia, who is a part very privileged, very rich family, that on the eve of her wedding to another esteemed member of high society discovers that she was adopted into the family and her biological parents are notorious serial killers. The tabloids pick up the story and they ruin her public image, and they start following her around. Her fiance wanted to get into politics, they get into a fight. She also is upset with her adoptive family because she had no idea that she was adopted in the first place. So she basically leaves everything behind and runs away in hopes to hide, wait it out, and see what she can do about this whole thing. And in her journey of trying to rediscover who she actually is, she's driven to this small, odd town named 𝕋𝕼𝕆, her biological mother is originally from. And she also starts noticing weird things about herself. The omens that she picks up on the streets, just general superstitions, all come true, which is something that she's trying to refute. Also, in the light of new facts about her ancestry, she wants to meet her parents because they're serving life in prison. So she meets her mother's lawyer and he arranges the meeting. During this meeting, her mother is insistent, her biological mother is insistent that they have not killed anyone and that they were set up. What was really exciting about reading this book is that I expected it to be something completely different. I heard that the protagonist is the daughter of two serial killers, and I thought this must be a crime story. I didn't expect it to have a supernatural element. I didn't know later in the book how the supernatural element is gonna manifest, because I figured out very quickly that something magical takes place here, but I wasn't sure how it's going to connect to her parents being serial killers. This was very fun and original. I love that this didn't have a toxic, romantic male interest because it's a constant in urban fantasy. The love interest, or who I suspect the love interest is going to be, is fascinating. His story is very, very intriguing, and I cannot wait to get to know him and his background a little bit more. Plus, this town is such a mystery. I want to know who all these people are and how it ties into the bigger plot. The only thing that I want to say is that at the start of the story I was very annoyed with how it progressed, because certain things didn't seem very believable to me. The way certain characters acted was very convenient, but I definitely forgot all about it when I delved deeper because a lot of interesting things happened, and the investigation element definitely pulled me into the story. If you see this book in your thrift shop because it's an older book, or you see it in your library, pick it up. It's actually really good. Gail Armstrong is definitely good at writing fast-paced stories with world buildings and story arcs that I hope are gonna be paid off at the end, because I can see a lot of foreshadowing and build-up in this first book alone. So this is the book that I read from this video. And then I picked up an ebook, which I was not allowed to pick up. You see my problem? I have zero discipline and self-control, even in my regular life. The only reason why I'm so organized and collected at work is because I'm salaried. So the second book that I'm currently reading was not a good pick for the first video in this series, I think. It is Swordspoint by Kushner, and while I still really want to read it, I think what boggles me down so much and what prevents me from picking it up more is that it has very dense language, and I don't think it needed to be that. There are certain characters in here that are more interesting for me, but the chapters alternate between point of views, so it's kind of hard to make myself pick it up. The story so far, I would say, is boring. It's just not incredibly exciting. I can tell that she's setting up the story, so I just have to push myself through the exposition. This, so far, is about a world where people can hire swordsmen to fight their duels. And we follow the aftermath of a scandal where one of the nobles hired two swordsmen to take another lord's swordsman named 𝕊𝕆𝕄𝕋, who has a bit of a reputation for being an amazing fighter. And surprisingly, he takes down both of the swordsmen and kills them both. There are a few other characters whose significance I do not understand yet. Some politics are involved. The current governor of the city wants to continue to be a governor, but he can only be chosen for a certain amount of years, and I think he ruled way too much at this point. Everyone gossips about this duel, but I do not understand how it ties to the bigger plot yet. So I'm kind of in the muddy waters right now. I do not know what I think about this book yet. And at the same time, I'm also reading an ebook. I have to make myself stop, but I don't know how. This video is just me looking more and more fatigued with every clip. I don't know why I'm so exhausted. It's only Monday and I had 2 full weekends, but I just don't know what's going on. I have very, very low energy levels at this point in time. But I wanted to move this video along because I have to edit and release it very soon. I finished reading Swordspoint by Kushner, which I surprisingly enjoyed, even though the first 60 pages were a torture to get through. Because of the writing, I think. It's not my favorite. It keeps you at arm's length, and it doesn't really let you into the heads of these characters. It reminded me of Fantasy of Manners a lot. Fantasy of Manners is, I believe, a historical fantasy usually, sort of like a Regency novel but fantasy, and that has similar vibes. First 60 pages are just hard to get through, in my opinion. Maybe I'm just not experienced enough with adult fantasy, but also I'm not a big fan of older fantasy in general. But you actually get through the first 60 pages, it gets real interesting, and finally all the things that you've been told about this whole time start making sense and start clicking into places. This is pretty charming. It's not a long story. I thought this whole book is one story, but actually there are a few short stories at the end. The whole book is about 280 pages or something, and I didn't expect that. I thought that it's gonna be longer. And also it doesn't have a direct sequel, I believe. Ellen Kushner wrote something in the same universe, but it's not following the same characters or something. I did not investigate it further. I love a good standalone. This was cute and I'm pretty happy about it. The first 60 pages I was just surprised that Orson Scott Card blurred it because he's a notorious homophobe and both protagonists in this are queer men. So I'm not sure if anyone ever told him what he's blurbing. I think it's a sign that he doesn't read things that he blurbs. I want a full investigation on that. I want to know what happened. Perhaps he was trying to clear his reputation. This is just a theory, don't quote me on that. So the story is about this guy named Richard St. Clair, who is a swordsman. Swordsmen in this world are these coveted people. They're very special and they have unique skills. Think of them as non-magical wizards in terms of where they are in this world's hierarchy. So the swordsmen in this world serve a very special purpose. They fight for gentry. Gentry can hire them to solve some grievances. For example, someone slept with someone's wife, this someone can invite this other someone to a duel, and both of them do not need to actually participate in a duel, they both can hire swordsmen to fight for them. And Richard St. Clair is one of those very famous swordsmen, and at the start of the novel he kills two men in a duel, and people are gossiping about him. At first I didn't understand the significance of that, and I think it's the book's fault. The reason why they were gossiping is because of political issues, because no one knew who hired him and who hired the other two, and one of the lords escaped to the country after. So people were insinuating that it has to do with the upcoming election. And the current chancellor in the city overstayed his welcome basically because he's been chancellor for a very, very long time, so some people are plotting to move him. This has a lot of political maneuvering and things done behind the doors, some gossiping, some plots. And if you enjoy this kind of novels, you're going to enjoy this, I think. But if you don't, there's not much more to it. The romantic storyline is very lovely and cute, and I was very invested in Alec and Richard's relationship. I thought it was a very fascinating dynamic and was very well done. Not just them, but the world in general was very queer friendly, and the relationship surprisingly was also pretty explicit for a book that was written in the 80s. I don't mean it in terms of it having explicit sexual scenes. I mean it in terms of them being presented as an actual couple and not the book just implying that they might have been a couple this whole time. So a very intriguing book indeed, especially considering the date of its first publication. I picked up the 5th season by N.K. Jemison, and it's going slow as with any adult fantasy, and I have only 3 days till the end of March, so I don't think I would be able to finish The Little Stranger 2. It's gonna transfer to the next month for sure. The 5th season is interesting. I am enjoying it, but it also scares the hell out of me. I took a bit of a break from filming because I was busy before my vacation at work, and also I finally went and vaccinated myself, and the second day I ran a fever, which is a very common symptom, so I laid in bed. So I had to prolong the filming and editing of this video, but I hope you don't mind that I didn't post it on 31st. I finished the 5th season, and it is phenomenal. It is the best book I've read in March. It's one of the best fantasy books I've ever read. I am obsessed with it. It is honestly genius. The world building in this is layered, it has lore, it has traditions, it has comments. It is incredibly complex and fascinating. I am obsessed with this world, even though it's an apocalyptic world, and I was kind of scared of it going into this book because the epilogue itself gave me a lot of anxiety. It's definitely going to be a hard sell for people that are very anxious about climate change and natural disasters. I was definitely affected by the epilogue. But then when you are introduced to the characters, the world becomes less real and more fictional, even though one of the point of views is from the third person, which was very unusual but very well done. I thought I'm gonna be annoyed by it, but I wasn't at all. So the world building is awesome and the characters are really cool. Not only they're interesting on their own, their personalities are interesting, they also serve the story very well because through them you're told about different customs and traditions. And this novel also has a surprising amount of suspense, which makes it very exciting and kind of a page turner, which is not a thing that I would usually say about fantasy books. This is set in a world where people are constantly going through natural disasters. They're so used to it, they're constantly on the ready to deal with the catastrophe. And in this world there are two types of people. One of these types is called still, which are people that cannot feel the movement of Earth, and the second type is origins, who can feel the tectonic shifts and also control them. Of course, as in any other fantasy story, people that use magic are either ruling or are oppressed. And in the story, origins are oppressed, they're either hated and killed, or they are sent to this special schools where they can hone their skills and serve the still people. If you are a person that needs to be explained things from the first page, I'm not sure this book is going to be for you though, because Jemison uses a different method of building her world. This is a book that is throwing you into not action, but is throwing you into the world, and then through these characters you finally start putting the puzzle together, which works for this specific story very well. Also, I personally prefer it because I don't like things to be told to me, I prefer to experience them. It works for the story though because people in it lived through many seasons. The natural catastrophes in this book are called seasons, so they lived through a lot of them and they wrote down certain things in their books, but not all of them. So this world is full of secrets, it's full of artifacts that current modern people don't know how to use and what they were used for. And it makes for a very interesting story because there are all these things laying around and you know that they're going to be important later in the story, and you cannot wait for the characters to discover them and to figure out what to do with them. Or perhaps something was alluded in the lore in the books that people kept, and people of the modern day just don't know how to apply it. And surprisingly, I'm giving this book 5 stars. I'm upset that I have not read this earlier because I actually own this whole series. I will probably pick the second book for April for this same challenge video. I love this. If you have any doubts, pick this book up, try a couple of chapters, give it a go. Be a bit more patient with it because it's definitely one of those books that has a wonderful payoff. So this is the last one of this video. And I am left with one book. I said that I'm going to read 4. I only read 3. The book that I'm taking into April is The Little Strangers by Sarah Waters, and I have to give it a priority because from now on we're going to have different rules. I think I told you somewhere in this video that the rules are just not working the way they are right now, and I have to change things up. And I think that we need to introduce one more rule for these videos to actually work on me. The first one, as I've told you, is I have to pick 4 books from my shelves that I'm going to read in a certain month. If I'm not going to finish one of the books, I'm going to move it to the next month. And I think the thing that we need to introduce into this challenge is that I can only do that one time. So if I have not finished the book in March, for example, The Little Stranger, I have to read it in April. Otherwise, I have to DNF it and I have to give it away, because otherwise I'm just not motivated to read it. If I'm left with a certain book, I have to transfer it to the next month. I still have to read 4 books, so The Little Stranger is going to be 1 book and I'll have to choose 3 more from my shelves. The rule about ebooks is just not working, so I have to scratch that out. And I would be able to read ebooks, but on the back of my mind I'm gonna know that I can only prolong reading one of the books that I've chosen for 1 month. So that's gonna be somewhat of a motivator. In the comments down below, tell me if you enjoyed this video, if you have any suggestions for rules. Maybe you have some kind of an idea that is gonna make my life a bit harder and easier at the same time. If you read any of those books or you're interested in any of the books that I've mentioned in this video, tell me also in the comments down below. If you have nothing to say, leave an emoji of a sun in the comments down below because I truly cannot wait for warm weather. This is it for today. Thank you for being here with me and I hope you enjoyed this video. That is all. I will hopefully see you with a new video soon, but until then,